Hello everyone. So let's discuss the next set of questions. Question number 11. You need a dynamic way of provisioning VMs on compute engine. The exact specifications will be in a dedicated configuration file. You want to follow Google's recommended practices. Which method you should use? Deployment manager, cloud composer, managed instance group, unmanaged instance group. Deployment manager is the correct answer. You have a Docker file that you need to deploy on Kubernetes engine. What should you do? A. Use kubectl app deploy doc file name. B. Use gcloud app deploy doc file name. C. Create a Docker image from the Docker file and upload it to container registry. Create a deployment YAML file to point to that image. Use kubectl to create deployment with that file. D. Create a Docker image from the Docker file and upload it to cloud storage. Create a deployment YAML file to point to that image. Use kubectl to create the deployment with that file. C is the correct answer. Your development team needs a new Jenkins server for their project. You need to deploy the server using the fewest step possible. What should you do? A. Download and deploy the Jenkins Java var to App Engine standard. B. Create a new compute engine instance and install Jenkins through the command line interface. C. Create a Kubernetes cluster on compute engine and create a deployment with Jenkins Docker image. D. Use GCP Marketplace to launch the Jenkins solution. D is the correct answer. Question number 14. You need to update a deployment in deployment manager without any resource downtime in the deployment. Which command should you use? Option A, gcloud deployment manager deployments create config deployment config path. Option B, gcloud deployment manager deployments update config deployment config path. C. gcloud deployment manager resources create config deployment config path. D. gcloud deployment manager resources update config deployment config path. B is the correct answer. You need to run an important query in BigQuery but expect it to return a lot of records. You want to find out how much it will cost to run the query. You are using on demand pricing. What should you do? Option A, arrange to switch to flat rate pricing for this query, then move back to on demand. Option B, use the command line to run a dry run query to estimate the number of bytes read. Then convert that bytes estimate to dollars using the pricing calculator. C. Use the command line to run a dry run query to estimate the number of bytes returned. Then convert the bytes estimate to dollars using the pricing calculator. D. Run a select count star to get an idea of how many records your query will look through. Then convert the number of rows to dollars using pricing calculator. B is the correct answer. Question number 16. You have a single binary application that you want to run on Google Cloud Platform. You decided to automatically scale the application based on underlying infrastructure CPU usage. Your organizational policies require you to use virtual machines directly. You need to ensure that the application scaling is operationally efficient and completed as quickly as possible. What should you do? Option A. Create a Google Kubernetes engine cluster and use horizontal pod autoscaling to scale the application. B. Create an instance template and use the template in a managed instance group with autoscaling configured. Create an engine template and use the template in a managed instance group that scales up and down based on the time of day. Option D. Use a set of third party tools to build automation around scaling the application up and down based on stack driver CPU usage monitoring. Option B is the correct answer. Question number 17. You are analyzing Google Cloud Platform service cost from three separate projects. You want to use this information to create service cost estimates by service type, daily and monthly for next 6 months using standard query syntax. What should you do? Option A, export your bill to a cloud storage bucket and then import into cloud bigtable for analysis. Option B, export your bill to a cloud storage bucket and then import into Google Sheets for analysis. Option C, export your transactions to a local file and perform analysis with a desktop tool. Option D, export your bill to a BigQuery dataset and then write time window based SQL queries for analysis. Option D is the correct answer. Question number 18. You need to set up a policy so that videos stored in a specific cloud storage regional bucket are moved to cold line after 90 days and then deleted after 1 year from their creation. How should you set up the policy? Use cloud storage object lifecycle management using edge conditions with set storage class and delete actions. Set the set storage class action to 90 days and then the delete action to 275 days, 365, 90. Option B, use cloud storage object lifecycle management using range condition with set storage class and delete actions. Set the set storage class action to 90 days and delete action to 365 days. C option, use gsutil rewrite and set the delete action to 75 days, 365-90. D, use gsutil rewrite and set the delete action to 365 days. Option B is the correct answer. Question number 19. You have a Linux VM that must connect to Cloud SQL. You created a service account with the appropriate access rights. You want to make sure that the VM uses the service account instead of default compute engine service account. What should you do? Option A. When creating the VM via the web console, specify the service account under the identity and API action section. Option B, download a JSON private key for the service account on the project metadata. Add that JSON at the value for the key compute engine service account. Option C, download a JSON private key for the service account on the custom metadata of the VM. Add the JSON as the value for the key compute engine service account. Option D, and download a JSON private key for service account after creating the VM, SSH into VM and save the JSON under gcloud compute engine service account JSON. Option A is the correct answer. Question number 20. You created an instance of SQL Server 2017 on Compute Engine to test features in the new version. You want to connect to this instance using the fewest numbers of steps. What should you do? Option A, install a RDP client on the desktop, verify that firewall rule for port 3389 exists. Option B, install a RDP client in your desktop, set Windows username and password in the GCP console, use credentials to log into the instance. Option C, set Windows password in the GCP console, verify that a firewall rule for the port 22 exists. Click the RDP button in the GCP console and supply the credentials to log in. Option D, set a Windows username and password in the GCP console. Verify that a firewall rule for port 3389 exists. Click the RDP button in the GCP console and supply the credentials to log in. Option B is the correct answer.